Money does not treat everyone the same. And it isn't because money is unfair. It's because most people never leave the stage they were born into. They simply get a slightly larger version of the same trap and mistake the larger version for progress. Machiavelli would ask a far more dangerous question than how much do you earn? He would ask, at which stage of power over your own money do you actually operate? Because income is a number, but stage is a condition, and conditions are what actually determine a life. There are 6 of these stages. Almost everyone alive is somewhere on this ladder right now, whether they've ever mapped it or not. Most people spend their entire lives moving between the first 2 stages, convinced the difference between them is progress, when it is actually just a change of scenery. A small number of people break through to the 3rd stage and call it success, not realizing it's only the beginning of the real game. And a very small number reach the final stages, not through luck, not through a single windfall, but through a specific, repeatable sequence of decisions that anyone watching this could, in theory, follow. This isn't a video about how much you should earn. Income is almost irrelevant to this framework. You will meet people at stage 1 earning enormous salaries, and people at stage 4 living on modest ones. This is about which stage you actually operate from, psychologically and structurally, regardless of what your bank balance says this month. 6 stages, no sympathy for which one you're currently standing on, only a clear map of how the climb actually works, and a warning about the stage most people mistake for the top when it is nowhere close. One more thing before we begin. These stages are not permanent identities. Nobody is sentenced to a stage for life, and nobody is guaranteed to keep the one they've reached either. People slide backward from higher stages far more often than this framework gets credit for. Usually after mistaking a stage for a finished project instead of a maintained condition. Treat every stage below as somewhere you currently are, never as somewhere you've permanently become. Stage number 1, the scarcity floor. At the first stage, money is not a tool. It is a threat. Every decision is reactive, made under the pressure of what's due, what's owed, or what might run out before the next paycheck arrives. There is no distance between an impulse and an action because there is no margin to create that distance. Spend today, worry today, survive today, and repeat tomorrow with no memory of yesterday's lesson. The defining feature of the scarcity floor isn't low income. Plenty of people at this stage earn enough to escape it and still don't. Because the stage is a psychology, not a number. A man at this stage who receives an unexpected windfall doesn't experience relief. He experiences a brief absence of threat, followed by a return to the exact same posture the moment the windfall is gone. Because nothing about his relationship to money has actually changed. Only the temporary balance in front of him. Consider 2 people at this stage side by side. One receives a small bonus and immediately feels the old tension lift for about a week. The other has been at the scarcity floor so long that even the bonus arrives pre-spent in his mind, already assigned to debts and gaps before it's even in his hand. Both are at the same stage. Both will be back at the same tension within a month, because urgency, not amount, is what defines this floor. This is why raising income alone so rarely fixes this stage on its own, and why it can look from a distance like the person wasted an opportunity that should have changed everything. Nothing was wasted. The underlying operating condition, reactive, urgent, unable to hold a future in mind longer than the next obligation, was simply never addressed. So it absorbed the new income exactly the way it absorbed the old. The mechanism trapping people here is simple and brutal. The scarcity floor produces decisions that are optimized for the next 48 hours and actively hostile to the next 5 years, because a mind under constant threat cannot afford to think in years. It can only afford to think in days, sometimes hours. This isn't a character flaw, it's what scarcity does to any mind, in any century, regardless of intelligence or ambition. The scarcity floor doesn't punish you for spending badly. It punishes you for never being calm enough to spend any other way. There is also a quieter cost at this stage that rarely gets named directly: the erosion of identity. A person who spends years reacting instead of choosing begins to describe themselves using the condition, "I'm just someone who's bad with money," when the more accurate description would be, "I'm someone who has never once been given the calm required to be good with it." The stage writes a story about the person trapped in it, and that story is almost always wrong. Nobody stays here because they enjoy it. They stay because the exit requires something the floor itself makes almost impossible to generate: a moment of enough calm to make one decision for the future instead of the emergency. And the moment that calm briefly appears, a new danger emerges, the temptation to spend it proving you've already escaped. Stage number 2, the performance trap. The second stage looks from the outside like success. Income has risen. The apartment is better. The car is newer. And this is exactly the danger, because the performance trap is not the absence of the scarcity floor. It is the scarcity floor wearing a nicer outfit, financed instead of feared. At this stage, a person has escaped the immediate threat of not having enough and replaced it with a new, quieter threat: not looking like they have enough. Every dollar earned is silently evaluated against a single question: does this make me look like I've made it, rather than the only question that actually matters, which is whether it moves the person closer to real independence. The tragedy is that this stage often produces people who work harder, earn more, and end up with less structural security than they had at the floor, because their increased income is entirely absorbed by an increased performance. Picture the two-path split that defines this stage precisely. Person A gets a substantial raise and immediately signals it: a nicer vehicle, a more impressive address, small luxuries visible to anyone watching. Person B gets an identical raise and changes almost nothing visible about their life, redirecting the difference somewhere nobody at the dinner table will ever see. 5 years later, Person A has a more impressive-looking life and the same fragile financial structure they've always had. Person B looks to a casual observer almost exactly the same, except for what's actually been building quietly underneath. The mechanism here is status signaling, one of the oldest and most expensive instincts a person can have. Humans are wired to seek relative position within a group, not absolute security, which means the performance trap will always feel more urgent than it actually is, because the discomfort of looking behind is emotionally louder than the abstract benefit of being ahead. Most people at this stage aren't lying to others about their position. They're lying to themselves about which one actually matters. The performance trap is the most comfortable stage to die in, financially speaking, which is exactly why so many people never leave it. What makes this stage especially difficult to diagnose from the inside is that it comes with genuine, tangible upgrades. A better neighborhood, a nicer wardrobe, small comforts that are real and not imagined. The trap isn't that these upgrades are fake. The trap is that they are mistaken for the finish line, when they are actually just a more expensive version of the same absence of structure that defined the stage before it. The exit from this stage requires something almost nobody wants to hear: a period of looking to everyone around you like you're doing worse than you actually are, while you're actually doing better than you ever have. Very few people are willing to trade the appearance of winning for the substance of it, and that reluctance is the entire wall between stage 2 and stage 3. Stage number 3, the first crack. Something breaks at this stage, and it's rarely dramatic. It's usually a quiet, almost embarrassing moment, a bill that shouldn't have been stressful but was, a number on a statement that didn't match the story being told, a realization that despite years of decent income, there is remarkably little to show for any of it beyond the appearance of doing well. This is the first crack. The moment a person stops assuming their financial situation will simply resolve itself with more income and starts suspecting the problem was never the income at all. This stage is uncomfortable in a specific way. It is the first time a person actually looks directly at the mechanism instead of the symptoms. They begin tracking money instead of just feeling its presence or absence. They begin asking where it actually goes rather than assuming it goes wherever it's supposed to. For the first time, there is a flicker of control instead of pure reaction, small, fragile, easily lost, but real. That flicker is easy to underestimate because it doesn't come with any external reward. Nobody applauds a person for finally opening a spreadsheet they've avoided for years. But this is the exact moment the entire trajectory of the next several decades quietly bends, long before there's any visible evidence that anything has changed at all. Consider the contrast between someone stuck permanently at the performance trap and someone who has just cracked into this third stage. The first continues upgrading, continues performing, continues explaining away the gap between income and security as bad luck or timing. The second starts asking a much more dangerous question. What would happen if I simply stopped performing for a year and watched what actually happened to the numbers? That single question, asked honestly, is the entire mechanism of this stage. The first crack rarely feels like progress while it's happening. It feels like admitting failure, admitting that the version of success being performed for years wasn't actually security at all. Most people flinch away from this admission and retreat back into the performance trap because the crack is uncomfortable. And the trap, however hollow, is familiar. The first crack is not the bottom. It only feels that way because it's the first honest look most people have taken in years. This stage is also where a specific kind of grief tends to appear, quiet and unexpected grief for the years spent performing instead of building. For the version of this realization that could have arrived a decade earlier if the discomfort had been faced sooner. That grief is not a sign of having done something wrong. It is simply the tax paid for finally seeing clearly, and it passes far faster than the years spent avoiding it did. The people who don't retreat are the ones who ask the next question immediately. Before the discomfort fades, if tracking the money changes nothing else, what happens if I also redirect it? Stage number 4, the leverage shift. This is the stage where the entire game quietly changes shape. A person at the leverage shift has stopped asking how to earn more from their own hours and started asking how to make money that doesn't require their hours at all. This is not a mindset shift dressed up as motivation. It is a structural shift, and it is the first stage where a person's financial trajectory stops being a straight line tied directly to their personal effort. At this stage, a portion of every dollar is no longer spent and no longer merely saved. It is deployed deliberately into something that produces on its own. A stake in a business, a skill that compounds, an asset that pays regardless of whether its owner shows up to work that day. The person at this stage is not necessarily earning more than they were at the performance trap. They are earning differently, and that difference compounds in a way that raw income never does. Picture two people with identical current incomes, one still at the performance trap, one newly arrived at the leverage shift. The first continues optimizing their spending and their appearance, waiting for the next raise to finally feel secure. The second is quietly redirecting a modest, unglamorous percentage of every dollar into ownership, small at first, almost invisible, easy to dismiss as insignificant. Give this 5 more years and the two are no longer in the same category of financial life at all, despite starting from what looked like the same place. Notice that the person at the leverage shift usually looks for at least a year or two like they're doing slightly worse than their performance trap counterpart. A plainer car, a smaller apartment, fewer visible signals of arrival. This is not a coincidence. and it is not a sacrifice made for its own sake. It is capital that has been physically redirected away from appearance and toward ownership, and the two cannot occupy the same dollar at the same time. The mechanism is leverage itself, finally activated rather than merely understood. Everyone who has watched enough of these breakdowns knows leverage exists in theory. Almost nobody at the earlier stages has actually redirected real money toward it, because redirecting money toward leverage means consciously earning less visible comfort today in exchange for structural independence later. And that trade is exactly what the performance trap trained a person never to make. The leverage shift doesn't feel like arrival. It feels, for a long stretch, like nothing is happening at all, which is precisely why most people abandon it before the compounding becomes visible. The danger at this stage isn't failure, it's impatience. Quitting the shift exactly 1 year before the assets built here start visibly outpacing the income that built them. There is also a specific social cost to this stage that deserves naming honestly. The people still at the performance trap will often, without meaning any harm, treat the modesty of this stage as a step backward, because it looks superficially like less. Explaining the difference rarely works and mostly isn't worth attempting. The results eventually explain it far more convincingly than any conversation could. Stage number 5, the compounding throne. By this stage, something is fundamentally inverted. The person is no longer the primary engine of their own wealth, their assets are. Income still exists, perhaps even grows, but it is no longer the dominant force in their financial life. The systems, the ownership stakes, the leverage built patiently at the previous stage have started to compound at a rate that no longer depends on daily personal effort to sustain itself. This is the stage most people, even ambitious ones, never actually see up close because reaching it requires surviving the invisible, unglamorous middle years of the leverage shift without quitting. The person at the compounding throne isn't working harder than everyone else around them. Often from the outside, they appear to be working considerably less. What they've actually done is architect a system over years that continues producing whether or not they personally show up to defend it every single day. Consider the quiet asymmetry this creates. Two people the same age, one still trapped performing wealth at the second stage, one seated at the compounding throne. The first is still trading nearly all of their waking hours for income, terrified of what happens the month they stop. The second could stop working entirely for an extended stretch and their financial position would barely register the absence. The machine keeps running regardless of their presence because it was built deliberately not to need them every day. This asymmetry is precisely why people at the compounding throne so rarely look like anyone's idea of what wealth is supposed to look like. There is no urgency left to perform, and performance was always what made the earlier stages visible from the outside in the first place. Remove the urgency and the visible signals mostly disappear along with it, which is exactly why this stage is so often invisible even to people standing close to it. The mechanism here is compounding fully unleashed, not the small, patient compounding of the leverage shift, but the accelerating version that only appears once enough time and enough reinvestment have stacked on top of each other. This is why the gap between stage 4 and stage 5 looks deceptively small from a distance and is actually enormous up close. The difference between a system that is compounding and a system that has been compounding long enough to become self-sustaining. The compounding throne is quiet, almost boring from the outside, which is exactly why so few people recognize it as the actual destination and keep chasing the louder, more visible signals of the earlier stages instead. It's worth noting plainly that arriving here does not end the discipline that built it. It simply changes its shape. The daily urgency of the earlier stages is gone, replaced by a slower, longer horizon kind of attention. Tending the systems already built, reinvesting rather than withdrawing and resisting the very human urge to finally relax the discipline the moment it stops being visibly necessary. But there is one stage beyond even this, and it has almost nothing to do with money at all anymore. Stage number 6, the silent empire. At the final stage, money has become almost invisible, not gone, but abstracted so far from daily identity that it no longer functions as the primary measure of anything. The person here is no longer building wealth. They are stewarding influence, structures, and often the next generation's starting stage, and their relationship to money has quietly become closer to Machiavelli's description of true power. Exercised most effectively when it doesn't need to be displayed at all. This stage is defined less by what a person has and more by what they no longer need to prove. There is no performance left because there is no one left whose opinion could meaningfully change the structure that's been built. Influence moves quietly through systems and relationships and reputation built over decades, rather than through any single visible transaction. The person at the silent empire could disappear from public view entirely, and the structure they've built would likely continue operating, and in some cases continue growing, without their daily involvement at all. Consider the final and starkest contrast in this entire framework. Someone at the scarcity floor believes money is a threat to be managed hour by hour. Someone at the silent empire has arranged their life so thoroughly around structural ownership that money has stopped being a subject that occupies their daily attention at all. It has become weather background, a condition of the environment rather than a daily concern. The distance between these two states is not measured in income. It is measured in decades of deliberate, often invisible decisions, most of which looked unremarkable at the time they were made. It's worth being precise about what separates this stage from the one before it, because the two are easy to confuse from a distance. The compounding throne is about a person's own structure sustaining itself without them. The silent empire is about that structure extending its influence and its logic beyond the person entirely, into the people it employs, the generation it educates, the reputation it leaves behind, none of which show up on any balance sheet, and all of which outlast the balance sheet completely. The mechanism at this final stage is legacy, structures built to outlast the person who built them, deliberately designed to compound and to influence long after any single individual's daily attention has moved elsewhere. This is the actual quiet definition of power the entire framework has been building toward. Not the ability to spend loudly, but the ability to shape outcomes without needing to be present or even visible while doing it. The silent empire is the only stage on this list that stops being about the person entirely and starts being about what continues after them. It is also deliberately the hardest stage to describe in a video like this one, because by its very nature it resists the kind of visible proof the earlier stages produce. There is no dramatic before and after for a stage whose entire achievement is quiet permanence. That is not an oversight in the framework. It is the framework's final and most Machiavellian point. 6 stages. Almost no one starts anywhere but the first, and almost no one reaches the last without deliberately, repeatedly choosing the uncomfortable decision at every stage in between. If this gave you an honest place to locate yourself, then don't stop here, because what you've heard in this video is only the surface. There are deeper layers to psychology, leverage, and wealth that simply can't be explored fully in one video. Not because they don't exist, but because most people aren't ready to hear them. That's why most stay average. If you're not one of them, then subscribe. Because every video here is designed to sharpen your mindset, increase your value, and separate you from the crowd. No fluff, no noise, just strategy. Most people will watch this and move on. A few will stay and change. Decide which one you are.